It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 437. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
It's really hard to bowl while wearing plush paws.
Kodra.
Hello.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
That seems like
how do you even?
Yeah.
Like I need to know this. Like how did you
Poorly. I did poorly.
Did you just kind of like roll it down the lane, or
You basically have two options. One is you can sort of mimic a proper form, and like this didn't work at all for me. And the other is you can just kind of roll it with both hands.
I was about to say, do your pads have good grip to them?
Yeah, mine do anyway.
Okay.
Like,
So-
I wasn't going to drop the ball.
Well,
It's just that I couldn't make it go anywhere I wanted it to go.
So more importantly, like if they have good grip, that allows you to do some options rather than if it's like slippery, you can't like palm the ball. I know there are some palming, like you don't necessarily even use the holes, you just sort of have a good grip and apply spin with your hands.
Yes, if people were like, if I were good at that probably would have been fine. I'm not.
No. It's reasonable. Like I have not been bowling in a long time.
Me neither, which didn't help.
I was about to say, if you haven't been bowling in a long time and your first time is in a fursuit, I imagine that's rough.
Yeah, it was a thing.
yeah?
So did they make you get bowling shoes?
No, actually.
Okay,
They
that
actually
was
ran
going to be
out
my
of bowling
second
shoes, so
question.
when I changed out of the fursuit, I had to keep the paws on.
Okay, that's kind of amazing though. Like maybe you need to invent a specialty line of bowling pads.
I'm sure it's not going to come up enough.
Probably not. Anyway, so this week is not E3, and it is as not E3 as you could expect. Like Jeff Keighley may say that he didn't kill the E3, but like he certainly proved that there's no reason to actually have E3.
I mean, he didn't kill it, but he is maybe standing on the grave.
Yeah.
So Friday was the big Summer Games Fest thing, and today was Wholesome. I guess Friday was also Devolver, wasn't it? I did not watch anything of Devolver.
I mean, they had something.
They had a thing. It's usually nonsense.
Wasn't there a PlayStation or something?
PlayStation was several weeks ago.
Oh, maybe that's what
Yeah.
I'm hallucinating.
Yeah. PlayStation was like a couple weeks ago. So well ahead of this, and their weird hallucinogenic announcement was a streaming pad that lets you stream your PlayStation.
It's the Wii U.
Yeah, it's the Wii
They're
U.
reinventing the Wii U.
It's the not Vita.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Wii U, super successful.
Yeah, like
console.
it is the thing that was leaked ahead of time that everyone assumed was a new Vita, but now everyone was sad. But yeah, like there's a bunch of stuff. Like the highlight for me was the Path of Exile 2 sizzle reel, which I have now picked apart several times trying to figure out what exactly was going on. I'm kind of in line with you, Ash, that's probably a new dash animation and not actually an evasion.
It is kind of standard for most people in Path of Exile to run some sort of dash skill, whether
Right.
that be dash or whirling blades or shield charge or so on and so forth.
Yep.
So a baseline evade makes less sense in that context.
Unless they're the other thing that I had seen was like in that trailer, you also see them using a ton of abilities. So folks were questioning if like that meant cooldowns were going into effect.
That seems unlikely. Like, I understand why people are saying this, but it does seem unlikely.
Yeah.
Is this new Path of Exile or is this Path of Exile 2?
I mean, this is Path of Exile doing the Overwatch thing where they're releasing an alternate path, but like everything is going to be Path of Exile 2.
So, like, it's not really them doing the Overwatch thing. It's them doing what Overwatch probably should have done.
Right.
And just
Yeah.
patched up the current one to be passive exile too.
Right. And when you start a character, you'll basically choose between the old campaign or the new campaign. And it's essentially a complete campaign replacement. Or at least that is what has been gleaned from everything that's been talked about so far.
Well, that's what they talked about 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Like, so we will find out more information at ExileCon in late July. But yeah, that's the assumption, is that, there's just basically like an alternate path.
The last time I heard about this was when they ran ExileCon before everything went to shit.
Right.
Was in 2019.
I'm also super interested in Alan Wake 2.
What? I haven't played the first Alan Wake. Is it something I should check out?
Yeah, no, you should just watch a Let's Play. I'll be honest,
enough.
like just watch someone else play it. Like, it is, I enjoyed my playthrough.
Alan Wake is a prequel to Control asterisk.
But also, like, it's a 2010 game that was doing some really inventive stuff at the time, but like, also it's from an era before certain constructs were a solved problem. It's worth experiencing, but I don't feel like actually playing it is an important differentiation there. It's got a good story. It's interesting.
Okay. I know I am very excited for Beastie Ball. Beastie Ball is a game by the people who made Chicory and, as Ash pointed out, Wandersong, and I should probably play Wandersong. But it's their idea of, let's have Pokemon, but instead of having them battle your Pokemon, they're gonna play volleyball. Also, the beasties in this case are a lot more like, the beasties want to play volleyball and they need a coach. So they come to you and they say, you're now going to be our coach. And I think that makes a lot more sense than you capturing the Pokemon and forcing them to bend to your will. I think that's a better story to tell. Also, the beasties, it's less about collecting players to form your team and more about managing the relationships of your team's roster. I noticed some things in the trailer where your beasties can either form rivalries or friendships with each other on the team, and that makes me think of Wildermyth, which I've also been playing, and that's a great system. I love it. Just some randomly generated, hey, there's some narrative competition between these two now, and it does interesting things. But yeah, very excited for Beastie Ball. I'm excited for all of these new takes on the Pokemon formula as well.
Even the one where they have guns.
The one where they have
actually,
guns.
I don't care about that one.
I don't think I know that one.
Power World was announced 2 years ago, where it was like Pokemon, but with guns and sweatshops.
Yeah, and the Pokemon have guns.
Yeah, it looks disconcerting.
I mean, you have a Raichu with a Gatling gun.
Is this the game I've seen people say, how is this not C Indeed?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. How is that not C Indeed?
Because they made enough changes.
It is legally distinct.
I mean, this is the same company that made, Craftopia. They're experienced in being legally distinct.
Lies of P is kind of a beautiful game, but also one that I'm probably never going to actually play, because I downloaded the demo just to see what I would think of it, and it is very Dark Souls, very Gaslight pseudo steampunk Dark Souls. I
mean, it sounds like what you're describing is almost very and now that I'm looking at it, I was going to say very Bloodborne,
sort of melee Bloodborne. like pure melee Bloodborne. Your options are melee.
Bloodborne is pretty melee.
I was about to say, I don't think you understand. You're just describing, does Bloodborne have ostensibly a pistol and a shotgun in it? Yes, those are melee weapons. Your pistol is, I want to try and do a parry mechanic. They just didn't want you parrying with shields because shields have a long and storied bad history in Dark Souls, apparently.
I was going to say it sounds like Remnant. which is also getting a sequel.
I'm a little curious about Sandland, mostly because it's real strange to me that there's a game suddenly coming out based on an over 20-year-old Toriyama property that I don't know that anybody actually remembers.
I didn't know this was based on a existing property.
Oh, yeah.
I did see a comment of like, Toriyama really wanted to write a story about a tank and then hated this story because he decided he hated drawing this tank.
But yeah, no, it's from like that period after he was done with Dragon Ball and was just doing various other things. And it got put in the English language Shonen Jump, which is why I know it, because I was picking that up for the first few years that it was out. But yeah, like I guess there's a movie coming out, which is also strange to me.
It was published in 2000, huh? Yeah, I had no idea this was based on an existing property. I thought it was Akira Toriyama doing something newish.
No.
I mean, he's got to take a break from Dragon Quest every so often, right?
Yeah. He should take a break from Dragon Quest and do art for a new Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Is he also the artist behind Chrono Trigger?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
For some reason, that art does not immediately scream Toriyama to me.
Marl looks exactly like Bulma.
Yes.
I guess that's true.
Like it's extra unavoidable if you look at like the manual that came with the game, but yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to be on 2 discs.
I mean, sure, if you buy physical copies of anything anymore.
Yeah.
That's true.
It just means it's going to take an unreasonable amount of disk space.
Yeah, I need to finally get an M2 drive for my PlayStation.
Yeah.
What wasn't the original 7 on 3 discs?
Yes.
Mhm.
Several
Or on
other
PC,
PlayStation
it
era
was
games were
4 discs.
Several other PlayStation era games from that time were on 4. I want to say 8 was on 4. I know
8 was on
Legend of Dragoon
4. Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the big selling points of the PlayStation 2 was discs that can hold more data.
And yet,
There were still multi-discs.
Uh-huh.
Shadow Hearts Covenant was a 2-disc game on
It
the
was.
PlayStation 2.
We got a release date for Baldur's Gate, which tells me when I'm actually going to get to play it, even
We
though
already
I've
had
had
a
it.
release date for that game.
Okay. I didn't know about it.
But yeah, I've been patiently awaiting the end of August for that to come out.
So is that actually out in the end of August then?
Yeah.
Has anyone played any of the early access on that?
I played it right when it hit early access and said, yep, this looks cool. I'll play it when it comes out.
Is it better, worse than Celesta?
They decided somewhat wisely that they should all vary from 5e rules when they saw fit.
Okay.
That's reasonable.
So it was a little smoother than Celesta. Like it launched into early access about when Celesta did. So it was very easy to compare the two.
I was kind of surprised to see yet another attempt at a new Prince of Persia game after the previous one crash landed and has gone into silence. This one is more of a 2D thing, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's I'm into that.
Like I'm actually more into that than if they had, continued with the 3D style. Because like, yes, it was new,
love
it was
Sands of
fresh.
I mean, Sands of Time was basically why people know Prince of Persia at this point.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of sad, but yeah, no, like this gave me feelings of the original games.
I am excited. It looks like a really fun Metroidvania.
Probably.
Like cool movement, lots of air dashing, lots of spikes to maneuver through.
I think tomorrow will be a big day with everything on the Xbox side. I will probably watch that. I will not watch the Ubisoft one. That is...
We know what Atlas is going to announce.
Yeah. Oops.
Wait, what?
For those not aware, Atlas's Instagram accidentally, after the first Summer Games show, put up 2 trailers for their new games, which were clearly intended to go up during the Xbox show because they had coming to Game Pass and started with the Xbox logo.
Mm-hmm.
They got the day wrong, apparently.
Whoops.
Oops.
So that is a Persona 3 remake. I wouldn't
Good.
expect the female protagonist, but I would expect probably all the other content.
Yeah, looks really nice.
We'll see. And a Persona 5 Tactics game using like the Persona Q art style.
All right.
So a topic that we have bounced around for a while, but have largely been waiting for everyone to get around to. Dungeons and Dragons released a movie, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, well, it was actually good, as opposed to any prior Dungeons and Dragons
Yes.
movie. So
This is the first Dungeons and Dragons movie I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't watch any other ones.
Don't want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Don't go back.
you haven't missed anything.
This
That's
is
what
the
I'm
great-
gathering.
This is the
This-
first Dungeons and Dragon movie. Congrats, you're
It's-
in on the ground floor.
Like this is the first D&D movie that actually feels like D&D,
It really feels like D&D.
because it really, really does.
Like that was sort of my big takeaway is like this movie definitely gets the source material and specifically like the vibe of D&D. Like
Yeah.
it's got you kind of can almost see the personalities of the various characters behind the main characters.
Yeah, no, you can absolutely like picture like the DM and players of this game and like what must have happened at certain moments.
Yeah, this is, by the way, this is a spoilers for the Dungeons and Dragons movie. So feel free to skip ahead if you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. The opening scene is such a perfect D&D plan. I love it so much. It's like, all right, we're in prison. We've got to come up with a way for us to get out of prison. Awesome. All right, one of the council members is a Tengu who can
Is
fly.
an Arakokra.
Or an Arakokra,
Well,
yeah.
Well, and importantly, like Chris Pine, like his character points out that like, okay, no, we're gonna be fine. Counselor Jonathan's gonna be here. He's an Arakokra. It's all gonna be good.
Yes.
No information about why he is important and why him being an Arakokra matters.
But even like behind the scenes, like as a group of players, you would like come up with this super harebrained scheme, and then they go through like you're role playing out this sequence and like telling your backstory and like all of that. Constantly like, oh wait,
Playing
we
for
don't
time.
want like we need to play for time. Like, okay, roll to play for time, and then it's like the GM's like, oh man, this was really good. Yeah, they'd probably get the part in. And it's like, oh no, here's the plan. Time for the high stakes shenanigans to happen. Grab the person, jump out the window. It's like, oh my goodness, that is perfect Dungeons and Dragons planning.
Because the reason it was important he's an Arakokra is because Arakokra can fly.
Oh my goodness.
And apparently carry quite a bit of weight. But though it wasn't so much flying as it was graceful crashing.
I
Falling
do
with style.
Yes.
also like I guess I don't see this very often, but I want just more movies that are about two characters with an insane amount of chemistry who are very obviously not romantically interested in each other.
Yes.
Like
Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez characters like were a perfect buddy team.
Yep.
They were great.
Well, like I had described this game or this movie as like a buddy cop film to people, and that's what it kind of felt like.
the scene with every scene where they were like creatively using a druid to wild shape,
Mhm.
also incredible.
Yeah. Like and
I remember when
one of the things and
like
this is good. Let me be clear. They played a little fast and loose with the rules when it made things cooler.
Well,
yes,
And that's
But I think-
exactly what they needed to do.
and
That's what
here's
D&D does. That's what
Exactly.
you do with D&D.
exactly like that's the thing is like everyone's like, well, this isn't the rules as written, and it's like this is absolutely how D&D works. It's like, hey, can I
Is
do
this
this?
awesome?
Can I do this? And the GM says, yeah, of course you can do that. Like that character, Doric, was the character who asked the DM every single time, hey, like maybe doesn't even necessarily know the rules very well and asks, am I allowed to do this? And the DM was like, yes, never said no.
Because
But
can I maybe
that-
change it to another different animal? And like, yeah. Because that was a few more uses of wild shape than a druid typically would have access to
Of
for a
course.
single chase scene.
details.
But it was cool.
But it was cool. So yes, like Dungeons and Dragons is not just about the rules. Like, that's also an important part of the movie, I think.
It's also about the rules when it's funnier that it be about the rules.
Yes.
Like, that's the important thing. Like, the rules exist to make the story better.
Like,
Whatever makes the story better is what you should do.
Like, there was more than one point in the movie where I just had a moment of like, oh, they just failed their concentration check.
Or just like, hey, you got to ask these guys 3 questions. You only get
5
3.
questions. You only get 5 questions.
Yes.
Yes.
That whole sequence, like, I saw that sequence in the trailers. It was like, this is great. And then they somehow managed to take that joke and keep it going. And I was like, oh no, this joke has legs and this is hilarious. Watching them, like, just go through an entire, like, graveyard worth of corpses. Oh, I loved it.
Digging people up.
One of my favorite things about that movie is you cannot tell me that the Paladin is not a GM insert character.
No,
Oh,
it's-
absolutely.
Absolutely
he
he is.
So
Okay.
you know how much he is a GM insert character? He was originally supposed to be Dritz.
I was about to say, I'm like watching the movie, I was like, this dude feels like he should be Drist. This isn't Drist in disguise, is it?
He literally was originally Drist, and they mentioned this. It's like, listen, there's some questionable stuff going on with Drow. We don't want to like invite like people celebrating the fact that we're using Drow or getting upset that we're using Drow, and so we're just gonna do something else. But in the original screenplays, it was supposed to be Drist.
Also, that it would make a little bit more sense that Drist would hide something in the Underdark.
It does, but I also
I mean, I don't mind.
I
but-
love Zank. I
No,
love
he was
Zank
great.
so much.
And he is like personality-wise, like he is distinct from Dritz. Like mostly it was like the big fight scene is like he's like dual wielding and like leaping around and everything. That's not how I would normally picture a paladin, but it sure would fit a certain ranger.
And I really just love that character. It's like this is me. I've not really hung around in Faerun very much. It was really cool how they introduce you very simply to sort of the concept of Thaens and the Harpers, which are factions I was not as familiar with. I knew Red Wizards were bad, but now I know they're really bad.
They are the worst. Like
Actually, no.
if you want a villain who is like completely without any redeeming characteristics, who is utterly terrifying, bring in a red wizard. Like they are the Nazis of the Forgotten Realms.
The old video game at this point, I can call it that, Neverwinter Nights 2, heavily features both of these factions.
Ah,
I mean, Neverwinter 1 heavily featured the Harpers.
I was a little surprised that he was just like talking about like, yeah, I was a former Harper. Like, I guess
like,
I guess they
hold
talk
up.
about that now.
Yeah, I
Isn't
had
this
to say,
supposed to
like,
be a
wait
secret
minute.
society?
It used, yeah.
It's pretty cavalier about that.
Like that shouldn't mean anything to anybody. And B, you're not supposed to be talking about it.
The first rule of Harper Club is not to talk about Harper Club.
Mm-hmm.
well, apparently everyone knows Zank is a Harper,
I guess so. I mean,
but everyone just knows who Zank is.
yes, everybody's heard about him. He once defeated a beholder with nothing but a sharpened gourd.
I love the idea. Like, so you definitely get like from a experience like with the GM, like Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez have been sort of playing with this person forever and sort of know their ticks. And so of course Chris Pine's character is like, oh god, not Zank again. I've ran into this guy so many times in these games. And everyone else is like, oh yeah, we know Zank. Oh my goodness. I love this movie so much. I'm sad it probably won't get more. I would love more adventures with these characters though.
I very much hope there's a sequel.
I just want more D&D written in this style.
Yeah.
This has like really, really powerful like Terry Pratchett's Discworld energy, just like coming from a different angle, and it works so well. Like it's amazing how much, because you can do, and it has been done, like Forgotten Realms D&D in this like really dull, dry, like high fantasy, I hope you like proper nouns kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And And like it's the same world with the same stuff happening, but it's just not as good. It's not as fun.
Well, there's a lot of times that people will create content that feels a little like Designer Imposter Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I mean,
like it's not that. It doesn't need to be that.
Well, and this movie did a good job of having fun with the elements of D&D that are kind of goofy without making fun of just the entire everything. Like,
Well, the characters weren't a brunt of the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the game wasn't a brunt of a joke.
yeah, like they took the concept seriously, but also there were gags about, here's some intellect devourers. And they'll attack anyone, they'll attack people who are really smart.
God, that was a great gag.
That was kind of hurtful.
Possibly, again, one of the most heartfelt scenes also just starts as a visual gag when Holga finally confronts her ex-husband, and it's like, oh, her ex-husband is a halfling.
It's a halfling.
And
of course.
She's a barbarian.
And she's a barbarian and literally is twice his height. But then it's like, oh, this is hilarious. And then it's like, oh no. Oh, this is so awkward and painful. Oh my goodness, this is really sad.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I'm like,
and then they go back to the visual gag with, oh, he's got a type.
And then at the very end of the movie, oh, she also has a type.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just the moment when she gets on, she comes out, she's angry, let's go kill something, and the bard just pulls out the lute and just softly starts playing a song, and she starts singing along, and it's so many warm fuzzy feelings from that moment in the movie. I loved it.
And then later it turns out that whole moment was incredibly important to the entire plot because, oh, that thing that she ended up with, it's a portal gun. Which again, felt very much like a real game of D&D.
Yes.
Oh, Ray, you picked this up? Did you even remember that you picked this up? Did you even write it down in your inventory?
I, as a GM, I tried to make a big point that you should care about this thing.
It doesn't matter how big a point you made that you should care about this thing. If you make a big point that you should care about the thing, most likely the players are going to ensure that they discard it with prejudice.
Yeah.
I'm so suspicious immediately. Oh, yes. This is a curse.
I mean, honestly, that moment felt to be like the DM set up this elaborate trap. Simon immediately rolled a 1. And the DM's like, well, now what? Simon, make an Arcana check.
How many checks can I give you? Will you succeed at any of them?
That staff Holga just pulled out of her pack. That looks familiar. You know what that is.
It is also so perfect that the person who is dictating the rules of the puzzle is Zank, the GM-controlled PC.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. This is also I don't actually know of a bunch of other movies that did this, but this is probably my new favorite hulking out smashing of the villain, where it's oh, now you don't have any powers. Here's an owlbear.
And again, the villain is a red wizard of Thay, so you do not take her alive. No. You do not give her any opportunity to regain her powers.
It is also a very good in keeping with the overall themes of Dungeons and Dragons, how did you defeat them when you lost before? Well, we got better. We keep trying, and eventually we can win. if you keep at it.
Yeah.
It was a great movie.
Eventually you gain enough self-confidence to punch Elminster in the face.
Oh my goodness. I loved Elminster. I loved Simon, the grandson of Elminster.
Yep.
Other standouts. I loved Holga very clearly asking details about the act she's moments away from stealing. Oh, great story. Highly recommend it. Feels like watching a group of people play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So speaking of excellent stories, hey Tam, I hear you've been playing Knights of the Old Republic too.
Oh man. So yes.
with the good but also awkward extended module.
Yeah. I mean, man.
Like, it's cool that we can experience this, but like when I played through it 2 years ago, it had some pacing problems.
Yeah. So KOTOR 2 is an Obsidian game of the old style.
With all the caveats that come with that.
It is in many ways Obsidian's take on Xenogears, at least structurally. In that, my controversial take is that Star Wars is at its absolute best when it has something to say. Like, there's a lot of Star Wars that's like popcorn adventures, and they're fine or whatever. It's fine. But when Star Wars is like actually good and sits with me for a long time, it's when it's got something to say, or when it's subverting expectations in some way. Because it's so heavily built on expectations that when it subverts it, or when it uses those expectations to say something, it can hit like a truck. KOTOR 2 has something to say, and the game is a mess. Like, baseline, that game is a disaster.
Like, it took me forever to play it because it starts on such a weird foot.
I mean, it starts in the way that Knights of the Old Republic games start, with an interminably long and painful opening sequence.
So I've actually never played KOTOR 2. So better or worse than Terrace?
It's worse.
Oh, much worse. Yeah.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, you're captured, and you're trying to, like, you're running around as an astromech droid trying to figure out how to get you free, kind of.
Yeah, I don't remember getting out of the opening area when I played it.
That's what broke me first. Like,
that's reasonable. So, like, okay, KOTOR opens up with tutorial, run around a starship as your character, crash land on Terrace, figure out how to get off of Terrace. Oh, by the way, let's rescue. You've got this like directional, hey, let's rescue this this cool Jedi that you heard about. Like, Terrace takes way too long and is really annoying, but it's at least got a hook. Piragus in KOTOR 2 does not. You open up with a tutorial in which you learn how to play by piloting T7 around an astromech droid. And then you wake up as your character in a mining facility where you quickly run into an incredibly unlikable character who sticks to you like glue.
Yeah.
And another character who openly and aggressively distrusts you immediately.
But like, it's not the Carthonasi thing again. It's like violently mistrusts you.
Yeah, like Carthonasi is it's the BioWare template of the like mostly good person who doesn't who like isn't sure about this and isn't sure if they can trust you. Except that they subvert that with Atten Rand, because Atten Rand is a terrible person he fits the template, but like he's a terrible person and he doesn't trust you for extremely good reasons. Probably better reasons than any of these other people who don't trust you in various BioWare games. But he's not a good person. You just have no idea about this. And he just seems like a snarkier, more like he seems like Carthonasi with less of a sense of humor and more open distrust.
Okay, like when you early encounter like Alistair in Dragon Age, he's kind of a snotty shit. And like imagine that, but like a more violently snotty shit that just never evolves as a character.
Yeah. And like KOTOR 2 in KOTOR and honestly in a lot of BioWare games, you have a bunch of characters. You've got a motley crew of characters who all somehow get along despite their wildly different backgrounds. KOTOR 2, your entire party hates each other. Like pretty openly, and this is really important, but it does make some of the early conversations like insufferable, because it is just like characters who fundamentally don't get along, and like this is a plot point. It's important. It's vitally important to who your character is and why they're relevant and what the game has to say, but it does make for some mess. And it makes for a little bit more mess because I said it's Obsidian's take on Xenogears, because they had to cut a lot of content to release the game.
A lot.
It's a lot of content, like entire planets worth of content, and that's a plural. It's a lot, and there's been a very dedicated, I mean, almost since release, actually, group of players or series of groups of players trying to restore all of that lost content. Sometimes this is great. There's some really, really cool stuff that resurfaces, and like there's some stuff that really crystallizes what the stuff that the game is trying to say.
But also that robot planet.
But also there's stuff that they cut because it wasn't good. And there's not a lot of, like, the stated goal is to restore all the old content, all the missing content. So that's what they did. Whether or not they should have is like there's not a lot of like editorial control.
Anything they found partial files for, they figured out how to make it work.
Man, this is an interesting like archivist problem, right? Because like, yeah, this is, you know what this is starting to sound like is like what people were talking about the whole release the Snyder Cut project would look like. If they literally just were like, well, here's what we have from the Snyder Cut, rather than like pour in another $35 million for reshoots and re-edits and recutting the whole thing so that there would actually be a Snyder Cut.
Well, I mean, like, not to get all religious with this, but it's kind of like the apocryphal gospels that we don't know if this was important. Yeah. We don't know if this is the ramblings of a lunatic.
I mean,
it existed. They were around at around the same time. So sure, they maybe are a thing.
At the risk of getting religious, isn't that just the whole darn Bible?
yeah. To be fair, yeah.
That's part of the problem is how do we tell these ramblings from those ramblings? Yeah. But yeah, this is a situation where, like, if they had had an additional year to work on this stuff, maybe they would have, gotten it edited and polished into a state of good.
Well, like, this is kind of an Obsidian thing, though, because, like, there's a ton of content that was cut from, like, Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
Obsidian, I mean, had a bit of a time problem in that whatever they were planning to do, it did not fit in the time scale that they had to do it in.
Yeah.
Yep. And, sometimes stuff gets, I mean, having done this for a while, sometimes you cut stuff and it's a tragedy. Like, sometimes you cut stuff and you feel awful that you had to cut it. And sometimes you cut stuff and you're like, oh my God, let's never talk about that again.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And sometimes it still stays in the files because it is too much of a pain in the ass to surgically remove it.
Right. You got other stuff. You are cutting it. You're cutting it to remove, to get it out of your life as fast as possible because it was bad. It's just not worth it to spend the week or 3 weeks or whatever to purge it entirely from the game.
Yeah, not when you're already on a deadline.
You're cutting it because you already wasted too much time on it.
Even if they had all the time in the world, I do not imagine a existence where Robot Planet would have stayed in the final version.
No, not a chance. But
it was interesting to play through, though.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of casually going through it. I have it running on the Steam Deck. It mostly runs fine. There's a known issue for years that sometimes the game will get stuck in a bad state where it'll like auto advance through all of your conversations, and the fix is save and quit the game and reboot and start it over.
Yeah.
But like, that's mildly annoying, but whatever. I'm playing it in relatively small doses and playing through it, and it's a absolute mess of a D20 system.
Oh yes.
Play it on the easiest difficulty setting because there's no honor or cred to be gained from playing it on anything harder than that. Just go, like, if you're gonna play KOTOR 2, pick a class that gets persuasion, max that out. Max out computers, probably. Take it as a class skill if you have to. Pick either Consular or Guardian. Whichever of those you pick the other one when you get to Prestige class. Call it good. Like,
there are Prestige classes? Oh, no.
It's
Yeah,
the
there's-
D20 system.
It's a, yeah, like I said, a bad version of a D20 system. I mean, it's your classes are Jedi Guardian, Jedi Consular, Jedi Sentinel, because KOTOR invented those and now they're canon. And then your prestige classes are Super Consular, Super Guardian, and Super Sentinel. And the correct answer is...
I mean, KOTOR didn't invent those. Star Wars D20 invented those.
That's fair.
But yeah.
But the correct answer is to go either Consular and Super Guardian or Guardian and Super Consular, because then you are an absolute lightsaber nightmare and also can force lightning people to death. And this is just objectively what you want to do. It's fine. You ruin people. But it's part of the reason I started playing it is because I've been reading a bunch of High Republic novels and stuff, and it feels like the High Republic is like taking notes from KOTOR 2, because the main thing that KOTOR 2 has to say is that the Jedi Order, as seen even in the prequels, sucks really bad and are like conservative reactionaries. And like that's a
theme that carries even into SWTOR.
Yeah. Well, and that's yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is it's like there's a bunch of stuff in SWTOR that's like, hey, this suddenly all crystallizes with KOTOR 2. And like as I watch what is becoming canon again, it's interesting. I'm pretty excited to watch where they go with it, because there's a few notes that I didn't realize would have showed up first in KOTOR 2, but I've seen elsewhere. Like KOTOR goes really hard on Ichani martial artists, which you see in Rogue One. There's a bunch of stuff going on in The Mandalorian that's seeded in KOTOR 2. I mean, stop me if you've heard this one, but a Mandalorian, sad that all of the Mandalorian tribes or clans are fragmented and, you know, stuck being mercenaries, and dedicates themselves to restoring Mandalore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I sure haven't seen that story retold at least 3 times in mainstream Disney media.
I was about to say, wasn't there somebody like that in SWTOR 1 as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
KOTOR.
Yeah, KOTOR, yeah.
It's the same guy.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
That's one of like 3 characters that can reappear. 2 you're guaranteed to meet, 1 takes some work.
But yeah, it's really, really interesting seeing the stuff that's coming up. And like I don't think that it is much of a spoiler to say that one of the very first characters you meet is the game's villain, because it's so obvious from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kreia is bad, yo. Like, you know that. it's not hard. But like,
yeah, but Kreia is interesting.
But yes, but Kreia is interesting. And like the stuff that the game has to say about the Jedi is not like, Kreia is not actually the mouthpiece for what the game has to say. And I find that fascinating too. Because it could so easily have been, you know, Kreia's writer just railing about Star Wars. Because like Kreia is a character who's kind of just railing about Star Wars. But Kreia's wrong, like almost constantly, like, or at least wrong in complicated ways. And like that's part of what the game has to say, is like is a complicated statement that's like, this character, you can understand this character and agree with some of their like base premises without agreeing with where they get to, because where they get to is wrong. which is a surprising amount of nuance from it for a game, for a video game from, when was this?
2014.
2004.
2004. I'm
was gonna
sorry.
say, it's
I
way
think it was
before
a
that,
4.
right?
Yeah, 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like from a game that's only a few months after WoW.
Well, and like honestly, I loved SWOTOR, but like one of the challenges of SWOTOR is it lost most of the nuance in the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were a couple of specific class stories that had nuance, but for the most part, it was more of a romanticized journey.
Yeah, I tried to load up SWTOR, and
Speaking of SWTOR, I guess they got sold this week.
I hope that's good for them.
I do too, because like honestly, Broadsword has not done an awful job with Dark Age of Camelot and Ultima Online, but those are like much smaller games.
Yeah, I think that the Old Republic storytelling became a mess in some of their more recent expansions, to the point where it's like it's like borderline unfollowable.
Yeah, it really is at this point. I mean, it was great up through Revan.
Yeah, but I also I think that SWTOR did Revan dirty, and I think that that's a bad place to be for an Old Republic game, because Revan is so important to the Old Republic that like to mess too much with that character is a bad move.
Mm-hmm.
Better to have him be this mysterious missing character than to get raid bossed.
Oh, Revan got raid bossed?
Oh yeah.
Revan got raid bossed hard.
Yeah, he got raid bossed really hard.
Because it worked so well for Illidan.
Revan's actually, I think, much worse than raid bossing Illidan.
Illidan also came back from being raid bossed because WoW can't come up with new characters.
Yes.
So in the same vein of revisiting old games,
yes.
System Shock. How is it?
So speaking of critically acclaimed games that are really old, the original System Shock is an incredibly important game. I love System Shock 2. I've played it from start to finish multiple times. I have never successfully played through System Shock. I could not, in good conscience, suggest anyone play the original System Shock. It came out in 1994. But happily, we have a remake that just came out.
Of the original System Shock?
Of the original System Shock with modern technology.
Can I just say, the way this game looks is incredible. Like, so obviously, it's got fully 3D graphics, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But they used deliberately low quality textures, frequently intentionally pixelized.
Yeah.
So it's got this really cool, like, retro look on a game that is like modern and running modern stuff.
It looks like how old games look in your mind. It really does. And it is a solid remake, like remastering of the original System Shock. Like, they did not layer on a bunch of new stuff. They didn't like add new mechanics or things like that, but the controls are really good, the graphics are beautiful, the sound is great, and so far, I mean, I'm playing it, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. And to anyone who really likes that style of game, who likes, BioShock, Deus Ex, System Shock 2, and you want to see where it all started, this is a way to see where it all started, but not have to deal with 30-year-old technology.
I've actually never played System Shock or System Shock 2.
I missed System Shock. Like, it was, I think at the time it came out, I maybe didn't have a PC capable of running it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was kind of a sleeper, the original.
Like, I remember seeing it in the store,
mm-hmm.
and I think I looked at the requirements. I'm like, yeah, no, my machine will not run this.
Yeah, and then System Shock 2 was like is the hugely, like, the one that everyone loves, and it has had System Shock 2 has been modded all to hell and back and patched to, like, with updated graphics and sound and things. So you can with a little bit of work take a System Shock 2 install and make it, like, look pretty decent.
I mean, if you don't want to put in the work, an HD remaster of it is coming out right around the corner.
Yeah, and
That one's not a remake.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe I'll pick this up because I mean, I do like games like Deus Ex, like exactly Deus Ex, and yeah, like BioShock was fun. I should check this out.
Yeah, this is a well done remastering of System Shock, and something I would like to see more of in general. Like in particular, people getting into Etrian Odyssey and bringing up all those games and then also seeing this being done with System Shock has made me realize I really wish that someone would convince Ubisoft, because they own the name, to do a similar updating of the first 5 Might and Magic games, because they are one long story, and like those I love those games, and they are that same type of exploring, on a grid, like running into interesting encounters in the world map, as well as random encounters. And like I feel like if there's an audience for Etrian Odyssey, there would be an audience for that, but with modern graphics. But again, I can't, like, in good conscience, recommend anyone play particularly the first 3 Might and Magics.
Yeah, I want to say it was 3 that I played a lot of.
Yeah, I finished the very first one because that was one of the first games I played a lot on the Apple II. Let me be clear.
I mean, Nightdive Studios has done a great job of remastering, or at least bringing up to be able to run on modern systems various games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what other games have they remastered.
Shadow Man, Quake, Power Slave, Doom 64, Sin, Blood, Forsaken, Turok 2.
Yeah, so other
that era of of
the 3D run and gun / exploration sim. Yeah, okay.
They've also remastered Strife, which was a really freaking cool game that very few people played, but it was built on the Doom engine, but it was a role-playing game.
Wait, they're remastering Rise of the Triad?
Yes.
Holy crap.
Yep. Yeah, this is kind of their thing.
Yeah, so I want a Nightdive, but for like wizardry and Might and Magic and those games.
Yeah,
That's
guess
what I want. But also Nightdive, just keep doing this, because
it's great. Like, they remastered Blade Runner, and it's still not the best game in the world, but like at least you can play it.
But it's yeah,
they are quote unquote doing God's work.
I love it.
So this is the week that it seems like the honeymoon is over with Diablo 4. Because like last week there were a lot of overly positive videos. Now the pseudo negative videos are starting to come out.
People have made it through the story and now they're getting bored.
Yeah, well, and like there's a lot of baggage.
That thing we talked about where when you level up you become weaker.
Yeah.
The streamers are starting to hit that.
Yeah, they're basically all the people that rush to level 100 now realize they have bricked those characters. They are effectively unplayable now.
Wait, why are they unplayable?
Because they didn't level up. They didn't do nightmare dungeons, and you do nightmare
appropriate gear for their level.
You do nightmare dungeons to level up your glyphs in your Paragon board.
Can they not go back and do nightmare dungeons?
No, they can't survive. So what
everything
they
scales to their new level.
So what they are doing is getting carried in Diablo 4 means grouping with someone who is the minimum level for the content you're trying to do. And they carry you at level 70. It is a bizarre world.
Oh, because they are as powerful as they can be at level 70. And
yes.
And so they're killing the things that you can't kill because on your screen they're level 100 and on their screen they're level 70.
Yeah, and I noticed this. So I have been doing the end game this week, and I'll say end game in quotes because there's really not an end game. But
I mean, there's a thing to do after you beat the campaign.
So the build that I was running was good in earlier testing phases, but it apparently ate a big nerf bat.
Did it get like the day 3 nerf?
I don't know, but whatever it did, it is not viable at all. Upheaval was not viable. I could not do tier 2. So like there's no way I could have made it through the capstone dungeon to unlock tier 3. So as a last ditch effort before I gave up, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to respec to Whirlwind. It's not nerfed badly, apparently. So I did, and I went from struggling on tier 1 most of the time to just wrecking tier 3. I did the capstone dungeon. It was a breeze. I'm more or less wrecking content, but the problem that I have with the state of the game is I have a lot of fun every 30 seconds. And the time between those 30 seconds is miserable because basically all of my cooldowns get hit at once, and then I can't sustain any of the powerful things because there's not enough mob density in the world. Like if I had a constant stream of mobs, I could continue whirlwinding through them forever, but it is built like a WoW dungeon.
30 seconds sounds really long.
It is. It's exceptionally long. Well, like, okay, my fun time lasts for 10 seconds, and then I have to wait another 30 seconds until I can have fun again. So
that does not sound like Diablo.
I didn't really ever like in Diablo 3. There are kind of 2 versions of it. Vengeance Demon Hunter and Archon Wizard. Because those skills, I mean, admittedly, when you build for them, you can be in them whenever you need to be. But baseline, they have like a minute-long cooldown. So it always felt like really terrible that I couldn't like sustain this all the time.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am. Apparently, if you have cooldown recovery on every slot you can get it and the maximum values, you can mostly sustain it forever. Mostly. But like that is perfect gear. So yeah, no, like the build feels great for a few seconds at a time. I feel like they could basically cut all cooldowns in half and still be fine. Like there's just weird design decisions. So I have a shared stash that's shared amongst every character. I can only buy 4 stash tabs. That represents a total of 200 items on the entire account. So what this has led people to do is break out the Diablo 2 logic and create a bunch of alts that they mule stuff out to, because a character has 33 slots on them. Yeah, I mean, it's like the end game is just more of the same. There's no significant change. You're just doing more of the same, and it's the same problems that you struggle with in the rest of the game, where every time you ding, you get a little weaker.
Are there at least new bosses, new like types of things to do?
No, not really. So the core, there are basically 3 things that you do in the world. There are nightmare dungeons, which are things that you have to have gotten a key to drop out in the world. And the key is kind of like a Mythic Plus key in that it comes with baked in affixes. Well, not actually like Mythic Pluses. Mythic Plus is these are the affixes for the week. Each key has affixes on it, so kind of like a map, but it's just the dungeon. It's the dungeon with a number of positive or negative things on it. There's usually 1 positive and 2 negatives. And by doing that, you get experience for glyphs, and glyphs level super slowly. Like it was taking me at least 2 dungeons to get a level on a glyph. And I guess these are kind of the modern equivalent of legendary gems. And you socket these into your Paragon boards.
I mean, that system wasn't entirely terrible.
Now, and the Paragon boards are just kind of boring so far. And they require you to have a lot of just raw stats. So like there are a bunch of nodes that you would choose that require you to like have 270 willpower or, 160 dex. And there's like, I think eventually you'll have more than enough of these points to make it, but like at least early on, I am choosing things that don't give me any stats yet because I don't yet have those stats. I don't know. It's fine. It's kind of like a more contorted, also more boring version of the passive skill tree from PoE with way more travel nodes, because a given board will probably have like 4 or 5 interesting nodes on it, and the rest of them are just, you know, some dex, some willpower, some strength. So like that's Nightmare Dungeons. Then there are zones that are called Helltide zones, which are just the zone, but instead of normal stuff, just a bunch of demons spawn. And you kill them to get soul type things, and then you use those to unlock chests. And the chests guarantee you a legendary of a specific type. So, I mean, that's a thing you can do. And there's a cadence of every hour, like they're on an hour, off an hour. So like if a Helltide's going on, it lasts an hour, and then there'll be no event for an hour, and then a Helltide will spawn an hour later. And then other than that, there's a thing called the Tree of Whispers, which sends you on little quests to kill things. And if you do 10 of these things, you get a box of loot that may or may not have legendaries in it, but really it largely just kind of feels like more of the same, you know, so it's just big open world that you're roaming around in. The levelers figured out the most efficient way was just chain run dungeons into to split level in the dungeons so that everybody goes in a different direction and clears a quadrant. And in dungeons, you have an infinite experience sharing. So like you can't get out of range of your party. And that still appears to be the fastest way to level. What concerns me though is like I've been playing fairly regularly every night and I am only level 57. So experience gain has been real slow after 50.
I mean, the game doesn't, it feels like the game doesn't really want you to go too much farther past 50.
Yeah.
I mean, level scaling stops at 70, sort of.
Right. 70 is when you go into the last branch. I don't know how this is going to be an enjoyable experience in a season. And I tried some alts, because once you have beat the campaign on one character, you can skip the campaign. And I was like, well, maybe this will feel better. I'm just going to roam around the world. But in reality, it felt way worse because it felt even more pointless. It's kind of like that thing that they went in Shadowlands where you just do zone events to level instead of doing any quests in World of Warcraft. And it's fine, I guess, but I had even less of a drive to level because I wasn't really, like, I didn't have any overarching mission that I was doing. Just here, go out into the zones and explore. So I don't know. It's the biggest thing that drives me up a wall, other than the no overlay, is the complete and total lack of any kind of search functionality. So, like, you don't even have sort filters. Like, there's just a default sort, which is by item type. So if you've been rat-holing legendaries to consume for the aspects that are on them, and you need to find one, which could be on one of any 3 or 4 different types of items, you have to just kind of go mouse over one by one until you find the item you were looking for. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's the shiny has already worn off.
It does sound like it might not necessarily make sense, especially at in level.
Well, so, like, I don't know. The thing I was thinking earlier in this week is, like, if you look at Last Epoch and you look at Diablo 4, they're polar opposites. So, like, Last Epoch is a game that, for the most part, has really strong fundamentals. It's just kind of rough around the edges, but I can see that eventually, given enough time and tweaking and some additional secondary systems, like, it's going to be a great game. Like, because the fundamentals are really good. Diablo 4 looks polished and the world is beautiful. The character models look great. The cosmetic system looks great, but the fundamentals are a mess. Like, resistances don't do anything. Like, they just don't do anything. They so negligibly have any benefit to your character that they're a useless stat. Yes.
So it's the World of Warcraft model.
Yeah. So, like, armor is the only thing that matters right now because armor affects everything. And I don't like, it's just there's so many flaws in the way that the system is functioning right now that it's going to be way harder for them to bring this into line than, say, to take Last Epoch to the same level of polish. Because, like, the decisions that were made during the design process are just flawed.
I mean, Diablo 3 had a first expansion.
Yeah, and they made some radical changes to that game.
They sure did.
And I think they're going to have to do that again. We'll see. This may be a great game in a few years. Wizorb.
Wait, how did this come up?
What?
How did this come up?
So I've just been playing random stuff on the deck.
Uh-huh.
And on a whim, I was like, what's the oldest Steam game I have?
Okay, that sounds about right.
And the oldest Steam game I have is Half-Life 2.
Sure.
Because, yes. But Wizorb is the second oldest and runs great on the deck.
Of course it does.
I would hope so.
Like, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be. Like,
I mean, it looks like a Super Nintendo game. I hope it
Right.
runs okay on the deck.
Sure, yes, but I need to be clear that this game is not recent.
I mean, yeah.
It is more recent than I thought it was. It's from 2012. It's only 11 years old.
Yeah,
Well,
but
12
like,
years old.
I wasn't expecting that it was going to be, recently updated, or at least updated enough to support the deck. But it's like, it's one of those little games that I just return to all the time because I really like Breakout, and this is one of the few Breakout games that is actually like challenging enough to stay interesting. And it's just like, you know what? I'm really enjoying the, you hop in and you play 10 minutes of wizard themed Breakout, and it's great on, like, as a mobile game. It's great, as Breakout clones usually are. It does get hard, but yeah, I have fun with it. It's just like, it's an old Super Nintendo looking, surprisingly decent animation.
I mean, I think the sprite work is by Paul Robeson.
Might be.
Yeah, Paul Roberts.
It's great sprite work.
Yeah, I got my Paul slightly confused.
But yeah, it's like one of those, playing KOTOR 2, that game is a mess, but I enjoy it despite that. Wizorb is just like, is there a ton there? It's an RPG-ish Breakout clone, but also, like, it's just fun, and it runs great. You can also play it forever on the deck, because I'm fairly sure that the delta between the amount of processing power it takes the deck to render its menu versus the amount of processing power it takes for it to run Wizorb is pretty small. But I recently played it for, like, I think I got like 6 hours of play without a charge, and it was still at like 50% of my battery.
Yeah, that game does not seem like one that would take a lot of charge off of your Steam Deck.
No, it sure doesn't. But anyway, it's a game that I don't think I've talked about much. I low-key play it a lot, and I felt like it needed a nod.
Yeah.
Because it's a charming little game.
I mean, it looks cute. It's like $3.
Yeah, it's not expensive.
I like Shredder's Revenge. I'm willing to give them more money.
Right.
Which is probably why, by the way, it's been verified on Steam Deck. The publisher is still around. They still exist.
Mm-hmm.
They published the new Ninja Turtles game last year, which, by the way,
know.
has DLC coming out for it soon.
Nice.
You can play as Usagi Jimbo in the
Yay!
DLC.
Oh, I'm into it.
Yeah.
Well, and it
Always happy
said
when Usagi shows up.
it said DLC characters with plural, and that trailer was only for Yojimbo, but it makes me wonder who else they're adding in.
Right?
Maybe Genosuke will also show up. That would be good.
Clearly, we need to have another couch pizza party.
And so this is just me popping a quick one in that was super delightful is Star Rail got a patch this week, and with it added 2 really great mini games that are happening right now. The first of which is a pseudo hacker themed roguelite dungeon, and the second of which is this shockingly competent museum management sim.
They're both great.
So like basically the museum was sacked and it's missing all of these exhibits, and also it needs to open anyway, so you have 3 bars, and the first one I think is like duration of the tour, the second one is educational value, and the third one is like entertainment, and different people that you can have to staff it have different attributes. Like you make people happy, and the goal is to like score an S tier on your museum tours, which allows you to upgrade the museum, and eventually it's like, oh hey, we've got a lead on this one item that was stolen. How about you go retrieve that? Or hey, there's somebody that wants to volunteer at the museum. Why don't you interview them? It's delightful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's very cute.
Kodra, I have no clue how to tee this one up.
So we I've been playing a bunch of different like tabletop RPGs, Wildermyth, Midara, board games that are turn-based. You have a bunch of characters you're going through, and like those characters are engaged in tactical combat battles. Almost exclusively, I've been playing these multiplayer. So Wildermyth, we played multiplayer. I play Midara with Ash. Tabletop role-playing games are just, it kind of makes sense. These all are games where you're inhabiting like a character, and you as a party are working to fight. I have played these co-op a bunch, and I've also done a little bit where I've played them solo. And it's not fun to play these games solo because it's just too much to try and keep your head wrapped around. Like I've been playing some Solasta, and so like 5e is simple enough, and it still feels like managing a character is fun when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. Managing a party and trying to remember what all of those various characters are doing, and like the optimal tactics you're engaging in with them, it's a little overwhelming. And even beyond that, like there is coming up with overall strategies for battle, and that cognitive load is something that is much more fun when you're sharing it, is what I've noticed. It's just, I mean, I guess my point is these RPGs, tabletop RPGs, are fun. I like tactics combat. I really prefer it when the individual characters are complicated, and complicated enough that it would not be fun to manage a full party of them. But instead, like I manage one and I specialize in my understanding of that one character, and then like we're all collaborating to try and figure out what's the best strategy that we should all be doing, and we're all offering ideas on like what can I do to help set other people up, and it opens up a good discussion point.
Yeah, so you're basically like each explaining the benefit that you can provide and how that may solve the problem.
Yeah, or like, hey, I could use somebody to do this, and then it's like, okay, yeah, like I can help you out with that. I can do this. It feels very lonely. I kind of want to see if I can play some. I know Solasta has multiplayer. I kind of wonder if Baldur's Gate.
Yes, Baldur's Gate has multiplayer.
I kind of want to try and do Baldur's Gate multiplayer.
I'm so excited about Baldur's Gate. It having multiplayer, like where it's.
I know the console releases of Divinity had like great couch co-op multiplayer.
Yeah.
I feel like the network play multiplayer of that got very overwhelming for me, because like I was in a conversation and other people were like getting into battles or pickpocketing, and it was a lot. We played some Wildermyth this week, and boy, that game is so much better. I thought it was great like a year ago when I played it, and it's so much better now. What they've done with the way they're telling stories around legacy characters is super cool.
I was not sold on Wildermyth's legacy characters until I saw that they did stories where legacy characters were required because you needed a like an older character.
Yeah, and like
because otherwise it just felt like, oh, okay, it's you can play new characters or you can just bring your overpowered already cool characters to continue being cooler than everybody else's.
Yeah, they have started writing stories and campaigns where like each character fills a narrative role, and so like this campaign required a legacy character who was the character was literally the parent of another character in the story. So there was like the parent, the child, the parent like had history with the enemies you were fighting. And then you had like a tracker and a friend, and like that was sort of the bones of the story that they tell, and then you get to add in your own little bits that shape that character, those stories. This also incidentally means we're almost certainly going to have one of our characters finally get retired due to old age, because one character starts much older than the rest.
Well, we have probably gone over. Any final thoughts?
Across the Spider-Verse, very good. Don't know if I've said that. Very good.
Hopefully you enjoy the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.